Tiny houses. They're adorable, practical, affordable, but I have a little house. Why is that? Why did I choose a little house and not a tiny? So many things to consider in order to give you a good answer. Yeah, it's complicated. It's really easy to get all tangled up in the weeds if you start thinking, explaining, talking, mulling, lots of little details. So I'm going to just stick to 3 reasons here. 3 basic reasons why I went with a little house and not a tiny. And an overall consideration for me. Maybe not for anyone else, but for me. Personal, to meet my needs. I'll talk about what those issues were and what my thinking process was like in the lead up to getting this little house. And stay tuned till the very end because I think you'll be surprised at what I have to say. I'll hint at it now. It wasn't about space for me. Why? I'll explain that to you a bit later. Let me get started. Before I get too far into this is a little request, not a tiny one. It really helps me out if you hit the subscribe button. How? It lets YouTube know that there are folks out there who are really interested in this kind of a topic, and that the kinds of things we talk about here really matter to seniors. The like button goes in that direction too, but it also helps me personally. It makes me feel good when I've really worked hard on something and get a good result. So if you'd hit that too, you'd be doing me a good favor. And thanks. I want to make clear here that this video is about my own experience. I don't have anything at all against tiny homes. In fact, I find them appealing. In the same ways, I bet many of you find them appealing. One other thing I want to say is that there are all kinds of codes and regulations surrounding different types of homes, and I'm not a specialist in that at all. So if you're interested in one type of housing over another, I really recommend that you check into what happens in your local area. Every place is different, as I discovered. Before I get too far, I do want to say something about what is a tiny home. And really, this is just a definition for the purposes of this video. You may agree with me, you may not. There's all kinds of blurring of the lines on the internet. But this is what we're going to stick with for now. A tiny home, for our purposes, will be under 400 square feet. It will be typically 10 or less feet wide. And length, that has a wider range, but very often shorter than 30 feet. However, the numbers work out to under 400 square feet. There's a lot of individuality there. Now, those lengths in particular are associated with the need for transporting the tiny home from place to place because it has wheels. That's all the defining we need here. So let's get right into it. My point number 1, let's talk money. Finances, budget, cash flow, mortgages. What do I have to say about tiny versus little when it comes to those kinds of things? Here was the basis, the entire basis for my decision making. It was in this spot. No money, no house. But there was something else in the mix that referred particularly to me and what I needed. I had had a history of housing difficulties. I felt many times that I was on the verge of homelessness. In fact, I did spend a lot of time living out of my car. Now it's called van life, but in those days, it was living out of your car. Yep, I had a virtual apartment on wheels. No stable existence with a home. And it had gone that way for a number of years. I had pretty much drifted around from place to place, location to location. And when it came to housing decisions, I was so pleased at the possibility of finally having a stable home. I wasn't going to make any choices that could potentially threaten that over the course of my life. As I look forward to the next 20, 30 years, the later years of my life, I was in my early 60s at the time. What am I saying? I'm saying I'm extremely risk averse. I want to take almost no risks when it comes to financial outlay for my home. I don't want any surprises when I'm in my mid-80s. I don't want to suddenly risk being out of a home when I'm 90. I don't want to buy into a situation where my house suddenly becomes affordable in 5, 10, 15 years. No, thank you. Those are risks I wasn't willing to take. Or since I wasn't going to be able to limit them completely, I did want to minimize my exposure. That would keep my anxiety about homelessness backed off a bit. Let me be content, enjoy my life. So risk control was a huge factor in my decision making. And financing was exactly, so to speak, where it was at. Money. Where I was going to get it, how much it was going to be per month, and what it was going to cost me to have a home for years. Here's what I found. I discovered in my desperate state, living in a hotel in a tiny room, barely bigger than my bed, worried all the time about what I was going to do for housing as I got older, fearful that I'd be on the street. I was in that condition, and magic dropped from the universe. I understood in some kind of serendipitous moment that I would qualify for funding to buy a house. And the funding for me would be so affordable that I could make the payments every month till the end of the term. Not to mention, I could qualify for down payment assistance. In next to no time, I had the entire funding for this house at an affordable, fixed rate for the rest of my life. You see what I'm saying about risk minimization? A fixed rate, 100% financing, set up for the rest of my life, that was totally for me. But here's the thing, that kind of financing only applies to single-family homes. It had to be a conventional single-family home, and there couldn't be anything like a park fee, HOA fee. And I was okay with that. Why? Because HOA fees, park fees, there's no upward limit to them. And since my goal was risk mitigation, they weren't going to be appealing to me anyway. So yeah, there are financing packages out there for little houses. They weren't going to be available for a tiny house. For me, raising money for a tiny home, that wouldn't have been possible. So I could eliminate a tiny home from consideration entirely on financial grounds and what finances meant for me. And oh, you might say, you could have bought a tiny house, a really little one, and used that kind of conventional mortgage. You're correct. That might have been possible. There are other reasons why that might not have worked out, and I don't really want to go into those now, but I can tell you briefly that if you're going to get a mortgage, the home has to be appraisable. And a really small house is much harder to get appraised than a slightly bigger one because it costs more per square foot. Simple math. That's it. And I did run into that a bit even with this little house, but we got it squared away. But I can tell you, in case you're wondering, that I did think about it. I did think about taking a teeny tiny house, not on wheels, and trying to get it through a typical single-family home mortgage system. But it couldn't work for appraisability reasons. I evidently have a whole lot to say about financing. In fact, I put out a video already on that topic. I'll put a link above. And I'm sure I'll be addressing this topic again in the future. In the meantime, let me go to number 2. Let's talk services. Now, what do I mean by services? Here's what it meant to me. I need power, sewer, water, internet. I don't have a TV and never will again. Garbage pickup, emergency services, and transportation. That means I gotta have a road near here. I gotta have a reasonable way to get places, like a hospital, the mall, grocery store, those kinds of things. And I don't want to be snowed in winter. So the roads have to be cleared. That pretty much covers it. So if that's my little wish list, what am I after here? Basically 3 things. I want access to those services. I want them to be reliable. I don't want them to suddenly disappear on me or be at risk of suddenly disappearing on me. That's too scary for me. What else do I want? Financial predictability. Oh, I know costs like that, they're gonna go up, but I don't want to be in a place where they suddenly go up astronomically. Or I have to replace some major system when I'm least able to cope, either because of frailty or because my pocketbook is a little bit too slim. That all just makes me nervous. Now for a home, those kinds of services generally come in two categories, right? They come with the town you live in, or you pay for them separately. For instance, I have a hookup to town sewerage. If I didn't have that, I'd have to build a septic. Those two systems involve two different kinds of money. One is a monthly fee that everyone pays, and it's subject to my usage and whatever the deal is in town. It's going to go up. Will it go up astronomically? Is there a huge risk that it'll go up a whole lot in 1 year? I don't think so. Not the way I assessed it. A septic tank? My parents had one of those. And you have to buy the septic system. That's a bunch of thousands. And you have to maintain it. You have to get it dredged out. And it also may need to be replaced in the course of time. That was all way too iffy for me. And that's just an example. I wanted a good supply of fresh water, good internet. It's my way of socializing with the universe, like you. I want to feel like I can easily go to the grocery store. And around here, the bus is free. Free. That means in my old age, when I can no longer drive, I can go a block away and get on the bus. It can take me anywhere around town. And if I can't even do that, there's going to be Ubers or taxis, ways to get around. That's all very important to me. I can see my sense of freedom getting whittled away in the course of time, and I really cherish the ability to get about. And for now I'm driving, that's got to be easy too. Not so much traffic around here. I appreciate that. So, those are services I needed to be able to count on. They help me feel secure, content, interested, engaged. They really matter to me. I could see they were important to a vibrant senior life. And since I'm in town, I also have a whole bunch of other services which are incredibly useful. It's easy to get Meals on Wheels, the food bank. The Library on Wheels parks just across the street. There are parks, there are places to walk, activities, things to see, and a hospital with good specialists not too far away. I can drive there myself at the moment without too much hassle, and if not that, I can get a ride. At any rate, my needs, my personal needs, are easily reckoned with in the space I've chosen for myself. I believe it's possible for those kinds of services to be available to folks who live in tiny homes, but it's less likely because very often tiny homes have to be situated in unincorporated areas because of zoning regulations. At least around here, that's the way it is. And that can put them out of reach for things like easy transportation, town sewer, and even internet. That wasn't so much for me. You're catching on, right? That my overall view is about aging in place and what that looks like for me, or thriving in place, which is what my viewers call it. Such a great term, that. That brings me to the third item I want to discuss today, and that is the design of my house. In particular, what it looks like on the inside. In other words, how I live in it, how I feel in it, how I move about in it, how it suits me. And the consideration has to be 20, 25, 30 years up the road. I was 65 when I moved in. So 30 seems a reasonable max. I'm mostly talking about layout here, but I'll touch on some other things as well. But before we even get into that, here's the twist I promised. For me, not going in the direction of tiny home was not about space. Not at all. I could have built a house like this one, the same size as a tiny house. I had no problem with the square footage for my personal needs. None at all. I don't have a lot of stuff here. And when I first started putting this house together, it was in the neighborhood of 400 square feet. Now the outside footprint is 700 square feet, but not on the inside. If you look behind me, I have really thick walls. Inside, it's less than 600 square feet. So little, not tiny by our definition, but kind of creeping down there. It's just my itty bitty second bedroom that really is the difference. So yeah, we're clear, right? For me, the choice between tiny and little, it wasn't about space. It was about interior design though. So here's what I needed. Let me talk about philosophy first. For me, when I moved in here, having a home was such a treat. I never want to leave. I know folks bandy around the words aging in place. That's not it for me. I want dying in place, which means I have to have features in my home that will suit me forever and ever and ever. What are my basic needs? I need to make food. I need to be able to get to a bathroom, and I need to have room around my bed so I can easily get in and out. And in case I have a helper, I wouldn't want stairs at all. And I would want to be able to access all of that if I'm in a wheelchair or have crutches or a walker. And then there are a whole bunch of little things. I don't want to spend a lot of time bending over or reaching way up. I have a stepladder now, but I'm not sure I want to use one of those forever. In fact, I could say almost certainly not. So as I was planning this house, I was beginning to build a picture of what I might need as I get older. I did have a couple of resources to help me out here, to give me some ideas. I used standard universal design features, and I also tried to follow AARP's guidelines for aging in place. Things you might want to have in your home, or how you might want to design it. I'll put those in the description. So here's the thing. I felt for me, I had to have those kinds of details in a home. Could I do that in a tiny home? Yes. I could design the interior of a tiny home like that. There's no reason why not. None. None at all. Could I have a handicapped bathroom in a tiny house? Sure. My senior-friendly bathroom would easily fit. I could turn a whole wheelchair around in it. I have a roll-in shower, a full-size roll-in shower. It would fit in a tiny home. I have space on 3 sides of my bed. If I have a hip replacement on one side, I can get out the other side of the bed. This is important to me. Could I do that in a tiny home? Yes. I have more than one egress from the house. I have 2 doors, and I have some windows that I could climb out of and be safe. Do I see myself doing that in 10 years? No. But for now, I have them. Could I do that in a tiny home? Sure. Absolutely. I wanted to have some space so that I could store items that I need to prepare myself a simple meal. Could I do that in a tiny home? Yeah. I didn't want to be clambering around on ladders or reaching extremely or bending over in every direction or crawling around on the floor or in any way impacting my mobility. Could I do that in a tiny home? Yes. But here was the problem. I could design a tiny home like that, but they don't manufacture tiny homes like that. This seems kind of crazy to me, to tell you the truth. There's a whole market out there. I'm sure many of the things I've mentioned, many of you would like to have as well, but they don't come in tiny homes. I mean, have you ever gone on a tiny home tour for a tiny home that's owned by a senior that has all of those features? No, there is no such thing. Oh, they can call it aging in place, but when you look at it, it doesn't have those features. And because I wanted those features, a tiny home was never going to be for me. And it wasn't about space. Now, the other thing that might have come to your mind when I was talking about space was storage. Perhaps I chose a little house over a tiny home because of storage. That wasn't it either. Why? Here's my philosophy. My stuff doesn't have to age in place. I do. And if my stuff doesn't have to age in place, but I do, I'm not going to use my resources so I can have more stuff or so I can cater to my stuff. I just need some basics to make it through the next 10, 20, 30 years. I don't have to populate my home universe with things. It does, though, have to be about me. And if I have only limited resources, I can't afford to make a home about my stuff, or I could be out of a home. And that's not happening any way I can prevent it. And that's pretty much it for why I chose a little house and didn't pursue a tiny home. But they're so cute, and I get so pulled in and attracted when I see them. I love how delighted folks are when they live there. They seem content, pleased with the universe, so happy to show people around. Excitement is all over their faces. But for all the considerations that I've talked about today, a tiny home was not for me. And no, it's not about space. It's about me. Now, have you ever considered getting a tiny house? Or maybe you have one already. What are your thoughts? And if you have one, how did you approach your decision making? And if it's on your wish list, what's hanging you up or not hanging you up? Where are you with that? Share it in the comments. I know folks are going to have a lot of questions, and maybe you'll have some answers. And if you have questions too, put them out there, because I just know someone's going to come along and they're going to know what you're talking about. And for me, that's it for now. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll talk soon, all right? See you then.